So 151 is Suprex. Its generic is Cefixime. Its class is cephalosporin antibiotic, and it's used for bacterial infections. 152 is Arthrotec. Its generic is diclofenac and misoprostol. Its class is analgesic, and it's used for osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. 153 is Circ. Its generic is betahistine. Its class is anti-vertigo, and it's used for vertigo. 154 is Nexium. Its generic is esomeprazole. Its class is proton pump inhibitor, and it's used for gastroesophageal reflux disorder. 155 is Tegretol. Its generic is carbamazepine. Its class is anticonvulsant, and it's used for epilepsy and neuropathic pain. So 156 is Monocur. Its generic is bisoprolol. Its class is beta blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 157 is Brilinta. Its generic is ticagrelor. Its class is antiplatelet, and it's used for heart attack and stroke, especially for blood clots. 158 is Atacand. Its generic is candesartan. Its class is angiotensin receptor blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 159 is Biaxin. Its generic is clarithromycin. Its class is antibiotic, and it's used for bacterial infections. 160 is Dexilant. Its generic is dexlansoprazole. Its class is proton pump inhibitor, and it's used for gastroesophageal reflux disorder or acid reflux. So 161 is Monural. Its generic is fosfomycin. Its class is antibiotic, and it's used for bladder infections. 162 is Cardizem. Its generic is diltiazem. Its class is calcium channel blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 163 is Isopten. Its generic is Verapamil. Its class is calcium channel blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 164 is Biastolic. Its generic is Nebivolol. Its class is beta blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 165 is Anusol 8C. Its generic is hydrocortisone. Its class is corticosteroid, and it's used for hemorrhoids. 166 is Frisium. Its generic is clobazam. Its class is benzodiazepine, and it's used for anxiety. 167 is Nizoral. Its generic is ketoconazole. Its class is antifungal, and it's used as antifungal and anti-dandruff shampoo. 168 is Sactrol. Its generic is acebutolol. Its class is beta blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 169 is Valium. Its generic is diazepam. Its class is benzodiazepine, and it's used for anxiety and seizures. 170 is Dexis. Its generic is roflumilast. Its class is phosphodiesterase 4 inhibitors, and it's used for chronic bronchitis and COPD. So 171 is Trandate. Its generic is labetalol. Its class is beta blocker, and it's used for hypertension. 172 is Losec. Its generic is omeprazole. Its class is proton pump inhibitor, and it's used for gastroesophageal reflux disorder and gastrointestinal ulcers. 173 is Olmetec. Its generic is olmesartan. Its class is angiotensin receptor blocker and it's used for hypertension. 174 is diamicron. Its generic is gliclazide. Its class is oral hypoglycemic and it's used for type 2 diabetes. 175 is Myrbetriq. Its generic is mirabegron. Its class is beta-3 adrenergic agonist and it's used to treat overactive bladder. So 176 is tofranil. Its generic is imipramin. Its class is tricyclic antidepressant and it's used for depression. 177 is Dulcolax. Its generic is bisacodyl. Its class is stimulant laxative and it's used for constipation. 178 is Hytrin. Its generic is terazosin. Its class is alpha-adrenergic blockers and it's used for benign prostatic hyperplasia and hypertension. 179 is Rocatrol. Its generic is calcitriol. Its class is vitamin D3 metabolite and it's used to treat calcium deficiency. 180 is polysporin. Its generic is bacitracin and polymyxin B. Its class is antibiotic and it's used to treat minor wounds and prevent skin infections. 181 is Onglyza. Its generic is saxagliptin. Its class is DPP4 inhibitors and it's used for type 2 diabetes. 182 is Locate. Its generic is potassium chloride. Its class is electrolyte supplement and it's used to treat symptoms of hypokalemia, also known as low potassium. 183 is Tagamet. Its generic is cimetidine. Its class is H2 blocker and it's used to treat heartburn or stomach acid. 184 is Minipress. Its generic is Prazosin. Its class is alpha blocker and it's used for hypertension and symptoms of enlarged prostate. 185 is Drixoral. Its generic is dexbrompheniramine and pseudoephedrine. Its class is decongestant and it's used for sneezing, cough, runny or stuffy nose, itchy or watery eyes. So 186 is Pulmicort. Its generic is budesonide. Its class is glucocorticosteroids and it's used for asthma. 187 is Zaxin. Its generic is rifaximin. Its class is antibiotic and it's used for traveler's diarrhea and irritable bowel syndrome. 188 is Clopixol. Its generic is Zuclopentixol. Its class is antipsychotic and it's used for schizophrenia. 189 is Salazopyrin. Its generic is sulfasalazine. Its class is anti-inflammatory and it's used for rheumatoid arthritis. 190 is Accutane. Its generic is isotretinoin. Its class is retinoids and it's used for severe acne. 191 is Toloxine. Its generic is digoxin. Its class is cardiac glycoside and it's used for congestive heart failure. 192 is Lomotil. Its generic is diphenoxylate and atropine. Its class is antidiarrheals and it's used for diarrhea. 193 is Motilium. Its generic is domperidone. Its class is dopamine antagonist and it's used for nausea and vomiting. 194 is Buscopan. Its generic is hyoscine butyl bromide. Its class is antispasmodic and it's used for painful stomach cramps. 195 is Coreg. Its generic is Carvedilol. Its class is beta blocker and it's used for hypertension. 196 is Topamax. Its generic is Topiramate. Its class is anticonvulsant and it's used for seizures. 197 is Azetrol. Its generic is Azetamib. Its class is cholesterol absorption inhibitor and it's used for lowering the cholesterol. 198 is Canesten. Its generic is clotrimazole. Its class is antifungal and it's used for fungal infections. 199 is Lozide. Its generic is indapamide. Its class is diuretic and it's used for lowering the blood pressure. 200 is Cortoderm. Its generic is hydrocortisone. Its class is corticosteroid and it's used for inflammation and itching due to skin conditions. Thanks for watching and see you next time.